Hi, I'm Sven Masterson from Mentoring Men, and I show men how to transform painful, broken, and dying marriages into deeply connected, intimate, and thriving marriages. And in this video, I want to talk to you about why your relationship might be struggling. And specifically, I want to suggest that it might be because your wife is nuts. Now, I trust that this video will get some attention, and it'll probably make a lot of people come to some inappropriate and incorrect conclusions based on the title. And I want to tell you that that's intentional, because I'm trying to reach the man who believes that in his relationship he has a wife problem. I was that way too. I've been married for 29 years, and for about 20 of those years I was deeply unhappy. I was frustrated, I was despondent, I was disillusioned, and I felt like nothing worked. I felt like no matter how hard I worked to provide for my family, no matter how diligent and dedicated I was, I just couldn't seem to find the connection that I wanted. And slowly but surely, I pretty much came to the conclusion I must have a wife problem. Now, I talk to men all over the world every day, and men tell me the same thing. They're tired of it. They're sick and tired of it. They feel like all they do is go to work, put food on the table, taxi their kids around. They feel like a cash machine, an Uber driver, and a security guard. And they can't figure out why the life they want, specifically a life that's deeply, emotionally, and intimately connected with the other person that they married, why that doesn't seem to be forthcoming. And most of the time, like me, they conclude that they have a wife problem. Now, I'm talking to you here today in a dangerous place. You see, I'm underneath of a black walnut tree, and right now, these black walnuts have been firing off the tree. They sound at times like a submachine gun, just dropping the nuts. And I have a bunch of them in my hand, and I have these nuts here because, like a lot of things here in my homestead in Pennsylvania, they've taught me a lot about myself, about my relationships with other people, and specifically about marriage. Now, here's the thing about nuts. These things fall from the tree and they're everywhere. And this time of the year, going up and down the driveway, we run over them. They're black walnuts. You could kind of see, I'll kind of show you why in a minute, from their insides that turn this really black gelatinous stuff, and it stains everything, and it's just annoying. This is in addition to the leaves that they drop. But you know, it occurs to me that we live in a unique time in history where we rely on other people for our food. And so it wasn't that long ago where our ancestors, my ancestors, would have been delighted to see all of this food literally falling from the sky. It falls from the sky so much that I have a little bit of anxiety sitting here that I might get pelted on my head sitting underneath of this walnut tree. But this walnut tree, these walnuts that I'm literally surrounded by, they're everywhere around me on the ground, are a massive amount of calories. They're really actually a gift, but they're not a gift that is necessarily apparent. You see, they come in this format. And this is what really reminds me of how marriage has been. You see, I got married with this juvenile, immature, entitled belief system that believed that because I said I do in front of a priest or pastor or judge, and because I go to work every day and am diligent, that I'm somehow deserving of a fruitful, bountiful harvest. And while there's a little bit of truth in that, meaning I do have a good work ethic, I always have, and I've exercised that in life, it did not occur to me just how some of the world works. You see, abundance is delivered in two formats in the natural world. There's the kind of abundance that, like an apple that grows on an apple tree, I can walk up and eat that apple, but I can only do it in its season, and I can only eat enough for right then. If I want to actually take full advantage of the entire abundance of the apples, I have to learn how to do the work of harvesting those apples, processing them, storing them, or preserving them. And that requires a lot more skill, a lot more diligence, a lot more labor, a lot more understanding. but that is abundance. So there's an abundance we can get, I would call seasonally and momentarily. Then there's abundance that we have to work for, and this is a pattern in the natural world, and it's a pattern in relationships, and it's one I did not understand because I had a very instant gratification kind of worldview that I brought to my marriage that believed that I should just be able to pick up off of a tree deep connection, intimacy, respect, appreciation, admiration, anytime, just because I was married. And what I didn't realize is these things are oftentimes more like a black walnut, in that inside of this is really a delightful thing to consume and to experience, the meat of a black walnut. But it's covered in this goop, right? And I'm just going to break one apart. You can see the black of the black walnut. I'm not going to be able to get into it because of another thing, and that is inside of that meat is the actual shell, and inside of this shell is the meat of the walnut. This shell is very hard. Now, you can see I got a little stained in the process. I'm getting dirty in the process, and that's just for one. But inside are calories, things that I can experience with delight, that can nourish me, that I can enjoy, that I can use to experience a nice life. But it's not delivered in a package that's immediately consumable. And this is a true pattern in marriage and in life. And so you see I moved the goop around, I got that off, and now I have this hard shell. And this is why I want to talk to you about this, and specifically about your wife, because, you know, again, all metaphors break down, but women are a lot like black walnuts, at least women in a long-term relationship. I'd actually say all humans are. Sometimes we come in a package that isn't the prettiest on the outside, right? And in a relationship, you get to know this quickly. You get to see what a person is like when they just got up. They haven't had their morning coffee. They're not in a good mood. They haven't brushed their teeth yet, right? They're wearing their comfy clothes around. Pick something. We all have a kind of an outer layer that can be kind of right? And in marriage, the first thing you have to do is you have to be willing to pick up a nut that looks like this off the ground and see that inside of it is something worth cultivating. And so as a man, it took me 20 years to realize this. I'm after the nut on the inside. And that nut, I would say, is an open heart of my wife to really see who she is on the inside and what's in there. And this is where the metaphor breaks down a little bit. It's not so I can consume that. It's so I can behold that and I can enjoy that. And I want her to see the same about me, by the way. But to get to that with her, I have to pick up these things that do not look like edible, delightful food. They look like this, right? And then I have to do the patient work in a relationship of being willing to see past that and past this stuff, right? And peel that away and get towards the inside. But then it looks like this, and you're like, ugh, right? So what is that in a relationship? That looks like being able to handle the range of emotions that a woman has, right? Being able to hear the complaint, sometimes the criticism, sometimes the frustration. A lot of guys are surprised to learn that this is universal. You don't have a defective wife because she has bad moods. You have a human wife, just like you have bad moods. And sometimes it looks like this. But if you're willing to do the patient work of being a man, if you're willing to get your hands stained a little bit, if you're willing to develop a cultivator's mindset, you can keep going past this. Now, I can't do this on film because it's quite a bit more work here, but there's a really hard shell that comes next. And so after I clean this off patiently, diligently, I still have a bunch of hard shells. And then I have to do the work of cracking that shell to get to the meat of the walnut. And this is what I have found to be the case in my relationship, that this kind of long view has really been the difference between an unhappy marriage and a deeply fulfilling marriage. Because I stopped seeing my wife like a fountain that I could just walk up to anytime and deeply drink from, and instead started cooperating with what nature is like, which is, yeah, there are some little morsels of abundance I can get every once in a while, but most of the abundance in the world you have to labor for. And this is something I find true all over the place. I could walk you around this property to other things that produce good things for me, and they all require work. Now, when I bought this property 11 years ago, though see, they're falling from the sky, I gotta be careful. It was kind of a blank landscape. I had to plant those trees to begin with. And then once they grew, to be honest, sometimes I have a really bad attitude towards what happens when they start bearing fruit, because they bring so much fruit at once, a lot of abundance, but I have to be the man that's ready to do the work, that knows what to do with it, and that sees the work not as a curse of some kind, but a privilege and an opportunity to experience the fruitfulness. And so that's what goes on here. That's what goes on in walnuts. It's what goes on in apples, pears, the garden, animals. All of them require that I become a more wise, knowledgeable, patient, understanding man. And when I do, I can get to the fruit that's inside these. But I also have to have the vision for knowing what's inside of here when it looks like this, which is not very sexy and attractive. And so I hope you can see my point that in marriage, a lot of us get hung up here and we say, no, I'm not going a step further until I see the fruit. And this is where marriages get stuck. A man runs into this and he says, I'm pulling back. I'm not giving any more warmth. I'm not giving any more encouragement. I'm not giving any more kindness. I'm not giving any more compassion or empathy until this woman gives me more of the fruit, the nut inside. And that is a grave misunderstanding of not only how women work, but how nature works. Nothing in life is generally like that. We don't get that opportunity. Instead, we get this kind of opportunity. And if you back off when you see this, whether it's black walnuts or women or anything in nature, you'll starve to death and you'll never experience the benefits of walnuts. Now, I know that's kind of a deep metaphor for some people, but that's how I am. That's how I am, right? And so if you want to talk further, if this is resonating with you and you're like, you know what? Yeah, I don't think I'm seeing this marriage thing correctly. I think I'm actually seeing my wife like she's nuts, but not the right kind of nuts. But I want to encourage you that if you start seeing your wife like this kind of nut, and yourself, that we all have a goopy outer layer that stains others, it's unpleasant, it doesn't smell good, doesn't look nice, and below that is a hard nut that has to be cracked. But inside of that is a beautiful, delightful thing, the meat. And that's true in your wife, I'm fairly certain. Now, you might not want to get that. I know it's really appealing to say, I can just go to the grocery store and buy nuts. You sure can, and that's your prerogative if you want to do that. But you know, the man who buys walnuts in the grocery store has an entirely different experience than the man who did all of the work of planting the walnut tree, watching it grow, watching it drop the fruit, harvesting it, and becoming the man that could go after the meat and the nuts with his own two hands. And if that's you, if that's who you love to be, then you know what I'm talking about. All right. I hope this means something to you. If you want to talk further about this principle of how to cultivate what's inside a woman more deeply, to stop seeing her as just crazy nuts, but start seeing her as this kind of nut. If you want to know how to do that, you have to first become the man who could do that. And in Mentoring Men, that's what we help guys do. We help them really kind of clear out the stuff within themselves that causes them really to hesitate, that causes them to stop this, to grow impatient, to get frustrated. We help them work on their shame, their fear, their anxiety, their insecurity. All of that keeps you from being a guy that'll do this work. And if you want to know more about that and how to do that, I want to invite you to scroll down below, look for a link to set up a session with myself. Let's talk. We'll tell you a little bit more about what we do, but we'll also hear about your story and offer you immediate, real feedback about how you can get started on this process today. With that, I wish you a good day, and I'll see you soon. Take care.